Today on Exploring Nevada, we head for the mountain country of eastern Nevada, where we'll ride the rails of the famous ghost train of Old Ely. When copper, gold, and silver were discovered in the mountains above Ely, the Nevada Northern Railroad was built to haul the treasures out of the mines and onto the rails, to fuel the industrial growth of the country. Today it draws tourists from around the world who come to enjoy what's been called the best preserved short-line railroad in North America. And here to give us an insider's tour of all this is the director of the East Ely Railroad Depot Museum, Sean Pitts.
Sean, these engines are magnificent, but I understand from hanging around the depot that out of the 20-odd engines that once functioned here, only 3 survived, and this one was lucky to make it.
That's correct. This is actually locomotive number 40, and probably the most famous locomotive of the Nevada Northern Railroad. Number 40 was built to go fast, and this locomotive made the run that would go from Ely up the main line up to Cobury, and this transported passengers and it transported freight. It was never involved in the mining operation here. It was kind of the favorite of the locomotives here on the Nevada Northern Railroad. In fact, one of our most endearing legends of this locomotive and of this railroad was locomotive number 40 and how it was saved from the scrap. According to a legend, locomotive number 40 was ordered to be scrapped out with the other 20-some-odd locomotives of the Nevada Northern. Now, there's an extraordinary amount of steel in every single one of these, 96 tons in this one alone. You scrap that out, you melt that down, and it becomes cars or bridges or homes or whatever you need steel for. Well, the master mechanic, the person in charge of running these facilities, said, I won't scrap this locomotive, I like this one. And so, according to legend, he hid this locomotive in the back of the shops of the Nevada Northern Railroad. And every time the railroad was being inspected, when the superintendent was coming to visit, when he was coming to take a look, they would magically, well, not magically, they were actually enlisted the aid of a number of people on the railroad. Dozens of people were in on this, and they would just at night tack locomotive number 40 onto a train heading to McGill. And it would go up to McGill, and it would stay there for several months, and then it would show up magically in Ruth. It would just kind of like a ghostly apparition. It would show up and disappear, show up and disappear. And according to legend, for some 20-something years, they were successful at hiding a 96-ton locomotive.
That's terrific.
It's a great legend. It's one of our most enduring legends. It's not totally true, but it's a great legend.
And is that why it's called the Ghost Train?
It is. That's why it's called the Ghost Train of Old Ely. And that designation belongs to this locomotive number here, built in 1910 by the Baldwin Locomotive Company. Still operates here on the Nevada Northern Railroad, along with locomotive number 93. 2 of those steam locomotives that are still operable. Great thing about the Nevada Northern Railroad is its astounding completeness and its ability that you can step back in time and step on one of these locomotives as they're functioning and take a ride into America's past by steam train. Now, there's probably only 20 to 30 operating steam locomotives in the country, and we have 2 of them here. And they've always been here. They have always been here on the Nevada Northern Railroad here in Ely with terrific, you cannot imagine what steam travel is like unless you experience it. And the great thing for us here at the Ely State Museum is we have the ability to tell you all about railroad travel, to tell you what that was like, and then to say, now if you go outside right now, there's the locomotive, and if you come back on a weekend, or if you're here on a weekend, then you can certainly ride that between May and September. It's an amazing ride into America's past, and it's an America that we're forgetting very, very quickly. At one time, probably a couple of thousand locomotives just like this one rolled across the rails of America. It was the way to travel. It's how you got from point A to point B. And here in Ely, we still have the locomotives that did that. Steam is very dynamic. It's almost like it breathes. The locomotive, when it's fired up, it actually huffs and it puffs. It's kind of like it breathes. You have smoke belching out, you have steam coming out, you've got bells. They're just there's something extraordinarily dynamic about them.
And they kind of rattle a little bit too.
They rattle some. One of the things that amazes me is the depth of passion that people share for steam trains. I've seen people who love cars, or people who love motorcycles, or people who love trains or ships or boats or airplanes or whatever. But that depth doesn't go anywhere near as deep as a love for steam trains. Talk to people here at the museum who've come not just from around the country, but from around the world to take a ride on a historic steam train here in Ely. One of the great things about this in this entire complex is we are so remarkably complete. The shops are still here. Stuff
people can wander through.
You can walk through the shops. You can watch volunteers working on locomotives like this. It's just amazingly complete. This railroad needed to be self-sufficient because we were so far from everybody else. And all the stuff that we don't know how to do anymore, blacksmith shop and carpenter shop and the air brake shop, that's all still here on the Nevada Northern Railroad. One of the 3 most complete railroad yards in the country. One of the places that if you are a railroad fan, this is the must-see place because everything is still here, just left behind when the railroad shut down in 1983.
So you get to ride the trains in current day. Right now, if you come out, you get to ride the trains. You get to wander around and see everything in arrested decay. But on top of that, you've got the museum where if you want to learn about what it was that was the reason for being for this whole place, you can go through the museum and learn about that.
That's right. We'll tell you why the railroad was here. We'll tell you why that was important to the country. We'll tell you why Ely, Nevada was the place that provided the wire for the copper that lighted America.
Okay, and Sean, you're an historian. What's the important thing about going into the past?
You know, the past, if we don't remember the past, it ceases to become important to us. And I think the most important thing, the most important reason for visiting your past is so that you can carry those lessons on into your present and that you can make more informed decisions based on your past. You don't have to repeat the mistakes that somebody else made. You can learn from those. Hopefully society gets a little smarter as we do that.
I've heard you say, Sean, that the past is like a foreign country.
The past is a foreign country. This is a foreign country in your own backyard. You can come to your own state, you can visit right here, and it's like taking a whole different trip to a whole different country.
Well, coming up next, a trip to this foreign country.
This is absolutely wonderful. Very historical and gorgeous scenery, and the locomotive is just beautiful.
Welcome back to Exploring Nevada. We're visiting with Sean Pitts, who's the director of the Nevada State Museum in Ely, and we're standing in front of this wonderful old engine, the 40, the ghost train of Ely. And Sean, what was the whole reason for being? We talked about going into the past, so what was it all about?
Well, it's kind of amazing to find a railroad complex this astoundingly complete in eastern Nevada, and the reason for that was copper. We had that. Now, I have to back up a little bit. 2 inventions in America changed the course of America significantly. One was Thomas Edison's light bulb. Before that, everybody had a kerosene lamp. It was extremely dangerous. You knock that over, you burn your house down. The light bulb was such an amazing invention to us. Electrical power was an amazing invention that really made America leap forward in the industrial age. The second invention was the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell invents that. Both of those inventions in the late 1880s, early 1890s, and they needed copper. And the copper was for the wire. Now, you can make wire out of a number of different things. You can make it out of gold, but you can't afford it. But copper makes excellent wire. And in eastern Nevada, we have that. We have lots of that. In fact, we knew in the 1860s that we had copper here. It simply wasn't worth mining. Without those 2 inventions, copper was good for, a couple of things. It made great roofs. It made some decent plumbing pipe. But it wasn't until wire was needed, and Ely had the copper that would provide the wire that would power America. So those 2 inventions, it wasn't until 1900 that we started mining copper here on a massive scale. And we were one of the places in the country, in fact, in the early portion of the early 20th century, we provided the majority of copper in America. The majority of wire for every building in America was coming from here, from eastern Nevada. And that's what the railroad was here for. You have a copper mine that's relatively isolated. It's in the middle of eastern Nevada. Well, you have to get that copper out, and you have to make it into copper, and so, but it naturally occurs here in eastern Nevada. Now, you have to mine that. It doesn't just, you can't just go pick it up. You have to dig it out and mine that. And so in Ruth, that's what occurred. They did this very large open pit mining on a huge scale. And we were the place that perfected mining low-grade copper on a very large scale to become profitable.